Hi, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Lindy Jung. I am an author-tuber and booktuber. I also talk about travel sometimes, and today is my June writing update. Honestly, I did my first ever writing update in May, and I was not expecting to have such a juicy one for you guys so soon, but June was a really busy month for me on so many levels. I think mainly because it was when I finally ended the job contract I was on, so I was able to put a lot more focus onto writing and other things during that last month. But it was definitely a lot of highs and lows, so you probably have guessed some of the drama based off of the title. It's not drama, it's just like a big step for me, but we're just gonna go right into it, I guess. So, a recap of my June writing accomplishments and events. I formally parted ways with my literary agent of, I think, like 2 or 3 years that I'd been with that agent. I, have nothing but goodwill toward this agent. I really enjoyed our working relationship. I think I learned a lot from it, but honestly, moving forward, I primarily want to write adult science fiction and fantasy, and that agent just didn't really represent or have experience with those genres. Not a dramatic reason, just purely a career move, and I'm really happy about it because I feel like I don't have to push myself to try to write YA anymore, which for a long time I have felt is a age category that I've kind of outgrown. Not that adults shouldn't be writing YA, obviously, it's just personally in terms of the sort of themes I want to focus on, as well as the type of work that I want to put out. I want to write adult speculative fiction and one adult rom-com, but that is for the future. Hello? Just have to wait for him to make a decision. Hi, baby boy. Here's my obligatory Monty tax. Oh, yes. He's getting big. That's my other June accomplishment, is I've been feeding him too much. He sometimes scams double breakfast out of me and my mom, so he's just enormous. You're like a slinky little tiger. Aren't you just a little baby boy? Okay, back to the update. So I've basically had an agent for the past 5 years, which is a very significant part of my writing journey. I've started to focus a lot more on craft just in the past couple of years, and really started to think about why I'm pursuing traditional publishing and what I hope to get out of it, and what I hope to put into it as well. Just thinking about that, I wanted like a fresh start. I feel like I'm in such a different place from, how I started out when I first signed with an agent when I was a college freshman. Like, that's a completely different person right there. My frontal lobe was not developed. Creatively, I was not the same person at all. I did have 2 books flop on sub. I actually was on sub when I ended my contract with my agent, so that book is now dead as well. But honestly, thinking about those projects, I'm like, I know I can do better than both of those, and I want to try, and I want my debut to not be a young adult book. So it was just a very pragmatic decision. I had to do a lot of soul searching and get really deep into it. At the end of the day, it was obviously like a really difficult decision for me. I am scared now. I'm unagented. I have to go back into the query trenches, and I will be doing that with moths, which I tried to pitch moths to someone and I couldn't do it. I was just like, they're alchemists in Paris. Oh man, what if this book isn't marketable? It already explores a lot of themes that I know for a fact that people are kind of iffy about seeing. I wrote a lot from my personal experience with a lot of really difficult things, so it's also a book that I'm scared to put out there just for my sake, but I think it's a good one. I think it's important, and I'm really proud of what it has become so far. We'll talk about mods a little bit more later down the line. So yeah, I'm happy with my decision. I am sort of very anxious, but I'm actually kind of excited to be back in that gauntlet. You go through so much that you can't help but grow throughout the process of querying and like trying to find an agent and getting rejections. I'm kind of excited to like grow in that way again. Okay, well anyway, enough about the agent stuff. The next piece of news / accomplishment is that I had submitted a short story in May to Apparition Lit. This was like my first time submitting to a literary magazine. I actually submitted like 2 short stories at around the same time, so it was like 1/2 of my first time. It is the 3rd short story I've written pretty much ever, and it, through some like miracle out of like 1,000 people or something insane like that, Apparition picked my story to publish. So I've been working on edits for that throughout the month. And it's actually coming out July 15th with the Creature issue, which is the 23rd issue of Apparition Lit. I am so excited for you guys to read this if you feel so inclined. No pressure at all, of course. It is the Fall of Esther Park. It is sort of like a paranormal-ish short story. It deals a lot with like gossip and mythology and expectations for women and like church culture, Korean church culture, so there's a lot of like juicy stuff in there, and I thought it was really fun. I had a lot of fun writing it, and I hope you guys enjoy it too. In other short story news, I finished writing and submitting a flash fiction piece. That is a short story that's under 1,000 words, basically, or just a piece of fiction that's under 1,000 words. It's not fully a story, I feel like, because it kind of breaks a lot of like structure conditions. I submitted that to a magazine last month. My goal is generally to like submit at least one new short story to a magazine every month, and I've been writing like on average 3 short stories a month. That was exciting. I honestly don't think much will come out of it, but it was a good exercise, and I've just gotten sort of used to the process of submitting and like writing a cover letter and finding a good magazine that I think might be a decent fit for whatever I've written. So yeah, I'm definitely on that like short story submission grind. I just felt like a little tap against my hair. There's a little creature. My next writing accomplishment was hitting 45,000 words on Moths. I did that insane, unhinged 24-hour novel challenge, and I added like 19,000 words to the book and was able to hit 45k. I'm just about to hit 50k. I've actually slowed down a lot. This is more of a July thing, but the first week of July I was like heavily revising Act 1 so I could sort of like go through and revise everything. That is the issue with the 24-hour novel challenge and anything fast like that, like any timed challenge for me, is that the words I put out are garbage, so I had to go through and fix a lot. I've sort of discovered through writing this book that I very much need a solid foundation to work off of if I'm going to progress a story, because in part I am discovery writing this draft, and that's kind of unhinged and like weird, but the best thing for me is like psychologically I cannot progress in the story until the foundation that I've left behind is pretty solid and I have a clear idea of where I'm going, because the past very much informs the future. Okay, and my last writing update, and possibly one of the bigger ones, is that so my work contract ended in June, and I was unable to and also sort of unwilling to find another job because my next contract starts in October. Yeah, that is like a 4-month gap, but a lot of jobs aren't gonna take someone for 4 months. So I decided to give full-time writing and YouTube a try. I mean, this is very much like I am able to do this because I'm living at home and not paying rent and for many expenses, and I have a decent amount of savings. Not a decent amount, actually, because I showed my friend my savings account and she laughed. But a decent amount for me. This is the most savings I've ever had, so I feel okay. So I'm fancy unemployed right now. I am going to just be putting out YouTube content weekly for as long as I can, or mostly weekly. I think I will definitely need some breaks because the main priority right now is finishing Moths and revising it and then getting it into shape to query it, because I really want this book to succeed. But I'm going to be very broke, so if you have some spare change, I have a Ko-fi. I was sort of considering doing a Patreon, but now there's like another secret project brewing that I am saving Patreon for. That sounds really vague, I'm sorry. There's a lot going on right now behind the scenes that I can't even talk about yet. Okay, so now that my June updates are done, I want to talk a little bit about my July writing goals. My number one goal is to finish Moths, finish the first draft. I know I said this last month, but while I didn't finish, I made it a significant way through, and now that I have Act 1 really polished, I actually just sent it out for a round of beta reading just to make sure that I have it like as tight as possible so I can move forward. I feel like I found my footing. I can just keep going until the draft is done, and then the book will be done, and then I can revise and go from there. So I'm hoping to get that like drafting process finished by the end of this month. Another goal of mine is to finish 3 short stories in July. I did that. Or no, I didn't do that, but I finished 2 short stories already, so I just have 1 more to go, I guess. I've really been on that short story grind. I guess my actual goal is to submit 3 short stories, so I have 1 submitted and I'll just need to submit 2 more. The other one that I finished this month is kind of like rough around the edges, like I'm just not happy with how the narrative turned out, so I definitely want to go back and do some like developmental editing, maybe have a couple people read over it. And then finally, my last goal for July is to actually finish Moth's submission package, so that's the synopsis and the query letter. I think the query letter that I had written in advance, because I can't stop myself, is pretty solid. The synopsis definitely needs work, mostly because the plot is still developing and tightening as I go along. That's a smaller goal, but just something I'd really like to get done because I like having those materials on hand, working on them. leading up to actual querying is just going to be an opportunity for me to procrastinate on sending out query letters. Now for what I learned about writing this month. If you can't tell already, I really enjoy writing short stories. I think every one that I put out there and that I finish, is such a nice little burst of accomplishment, and I'm able to look back and be like, hey, this is pretty good. I can actually put out like polished final writing, because Moths is just not polished at all, and it's been sort of messing with my head. So although it sort of feels like I'm taking a lot of detours by working on all this short fiction, I think it has been helping me work on my confidence as a writer and hone some craft skills and things like that. And also definitely the experience of editing alongside like other people to polish up Esther Park for publication, that has just given me my editorial eye back. Writing just feels so much more real when you have someone else like actually looking over your work with a professional eye. I feel like a real writer now. I haven't felt like a real writer this entire time, pretty much, even when I had my agents. Another smaller lesson I learned is to exaggerate characters' traits when writing fiction. In a lot of instances, subtlety is the move, but I think, especially if you have a larger cast, something that I've noticed while beta reading other people's work or just like working through my own stuff, people tend to blur together if you're not like giving them something distinguishing. Whenever I critique for other people, one of my biggest pieces of character writing advice is to make sure that every critical character introduction has some sort of memorable detail, like a specific memorable detail, either about the character or what they're doing in that moment. And then this is just sort of a furthering of that concept. When I'm reading and people start to blur together and names just start being names and words on a page, I get really frustrated. So giving characters extreme traits, I think, just helps them stand out a little bit more, so that I can remember who they are, but also just to make sure that these characters aren't word salad until they actually have relevance to the plot, and that they feel like people rather than devices. My last lesson for June has to do with the fact that I have been on the sly sort of brainstorming what my next book will be. I have a bunch of ideas lined up and I cannot pick between them. This is also what happened after I finished my last young adult fantasy, and I ended up trying to draft 2 books at the same time and ultimately abandoned the young adult fantasy that I was drafting alongside Moths. So I need to pick one idea and I need to focus on it. In brainstorming these ideas, I've been like developing them beyond just the core pitch or concept. And while this is very much an obvious thing that I think a lot of people sort of know inherently, like always, I had to have it put out in concrete language. A cool concept is literally nothing without an emotional story arc or an internal arc for the characters. It's nothing without that emotional core. So I had a really cool science fantasy idea with like a really cool world, concept, and plot, and it was just falling flat again and again until I figured out the core relationships that make it tick and like the internal drama, like the emotional drama, and that was when it became like a good idea and one that I'm seriously considering pursuing. This habit of focusing more on the outside external plot versus the internal plot is definitely a carryover from when I primarily wrote like kind of not that good young adult fantasy or young adult fiction. Now that I'm finally growing and changing as a person, and Moths is so focused on like the internal arc that it's hard to pitch, but I'm very proud of that internal arc and I think it's good and strong because of that internal arc. I'm finally able to like merge my 2 interests, I think, with what will be this potential next project, which has a really cool concept and plot and like world. So all the external stuff is cool and then the internal stuff is really personal and impactful, I hope. I'm excited. Even now, even though I love Moths, I love working on it. No, I don't love working on it. I love Moths. I'm putting a lot of myself into this project and I want it to be the best it can be. I still feel like I can level up very quickly with this next project, which is exciting. I want every book that I write to challenge me in new and different ways. For me, when I picture my, potential hopeful career as a writer, I picture a career where I'm writing something very different every time. Even if it's all like adult speculative fiction, I want it to be a very different like subgenre. I want it to be informed by different bodies of work that come before it. I would not churn out the same book again and again. Like, Moths will probably be the only dark academia I ever write, even just for myself. So being able to like learn new lessons and adapt for each new book is something that's very exciting to me and one of the main reasons that I keep writing, despite it all. So with that, we are pretty much done. I will probably not be doing a July update because, again, I just really am going to be focusing on Moths. So like the biggest update will be that I finished Moths and I plan to do a whole individual video for that, just documenting my 3-year journey with this book, and hopefully that'll come to fruition. When I get close to finishing a book, sometimes I worry that something horrible will happen to me, like God will smite me down before I'm able to finish. I'm not religious. I feel like I shouldn't say that, but the universe is going to conspire against me to make sure that I do not finish the book. Obviously that is nonsense. I finished 2 books already, one multiple times, but you know, there's just that like weird anxiety. I'm like, surely not. I've been working on this for 3 years and it's never been this close to done. So surely something will happen, because it just doesn't feel possible for this book to be done. Obviously that's very silly, and hopefully you guys will be seeing a video recapping my experience with writing moths sometime in the next month or so. I don't even know when I would film it. That is all. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!